In this video, we're going to dive a bit further into the specific blend modes available within Photoshop. Now, I want to start off just by giving a really general overview of what each one of these blend modes do. You'll notice they're kind of divided into groups, and I think it'll help if we start off by giving you an idea of what these groups are for. So at the very top, we have normal and dissolve. At least that's when we're looking at the layers panel. If I look over at the brush options, you'll notice we also get behind and clear. This first group doesn't really blend anything. That's not really what it's for. So these are just kind of special modes that change the way fully opaque paint is going to appear. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we kind of move forward, because we're going to go through normal, dissolve, and all the way down to darker color in this video. I do want to mention I will be saving the other two blend modes specifically for brushes. I'll save those for the last thing we discuss. Now down from here we have the next group, which includes darken through darker color. As the names suggest, all of these blend modes are generally here to darken whatever your result is going to be. So the base and the blend will be combined and the result will always be darker. The next group is lighten through lighter color, and again, as the name suggests, your base and your blend color are going to be combined and the result will always be lighter. Then we have overlay through hard mix. These are variable, and what that means is depending on the exact base color and the blend color, your result may end up being lighter or it may end up being darker. It's going to fluctuate depending on the nature of those two colors. Next we have difference through divide. These are specialty cases. These are going to start off by giving you kind of an inversion effect. If you need to invert your colors, of course how much that inversion takes place is dependent upon your base and your blend, as well as some special cases for subtracting and dividing the results. Now when you see mathematical terms such as multiply, subtract, divide, you need to remember that in the end colors in Photoshop are within a computer. So really they are just represented by numbers, and you can perform mathematical operations on those numbers and get a new color. At the very bottom we have our replacement blend modes. These allow us to replace any particular aspect of a color, such as the hue, the saturation, the luminosity, or color itself, which is going to take a pair of them at the same time. So it'll grab more than one of those factors. It's a nice way to colorize a grayscale image. And we'll talk about each one of these in turn, but in this specific video, I just want to take a look at normal, dissolve, darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and all the way down to darker color. So that's kind of where we are going to be beginning. So normal is pretty straightforward. Actually, you know, to make this make a whole lot more sense, let me do something real quick. Something just occurred to me. Let's make a layer, which I will call base. And then let's do another layer, which I'll call blend, just like I did in the primer video. And let's put some colors down. So I'm going to leave these colors relatively desaturated. So notice I'm not going all the way to full saturation on these. That's just to give us a little more room on some of these results so that we don't end up with really, really darkened results. So this will be our base. Let's go over to blend and we'll grab some other color down the way. How about this really kind of gross looking green? Now again, with normal, we have no blend. It's just a matter of the pixels that are on top on a higher layer just sitting right on top of the other. So normal really is just kind of like turning off your blend mode. Dissolve, on the other hand, will appear not to do anything. You have to look really close to see the difference, at least at first. You see around the edges of our little green paint blob here that things look a little pixelated and gross? Check it out. If I switch back over to normal, what actually happens? Now, normal, everything is nicely anti-aliased. That's because we have a brush with a little bit of softening around the edges. And that softening leads to pixels that are semi-transparent. Dissolve mode is going to simulate that transparency by just giving you a random selection of completely transparent pixels. So transparency in terms of the dissolve mode becomes binary. Something is either completely transparent or completely opaque. And medium levels of opacity are simulated by way of actually randomly scattering these. So watch this. If I take my blend mode, set it to dissolve, grab my opacity and start to pull it down, we get like this random noise effect as the green blob begins to disappear. Now to really show that off, let me back out. So there we go. Let's go all the way back out to 100% zoom, and you'll see as I adjust my opacity slider, it fills in with something that looks kind of like TV static. Now compare that to normal, where the thing just gets nicely clear. So you can really see the difference there. And if I set it down to about 50% or so, somewhere around that, and jump back and forth between normal and dissolve, you can really see what the difference is. Dissolve is really nice if you're trying to simulate just a little bit of an extra noisy effect and you need to do it quickly and cheaply. Then I've more than once reached for that. All right, now let's move down to the next group. We have darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, and darken color. Now darken is pretty straightforward. This is going to analyze the underlying pixels and grab either the brush color or, the blend color or the base color, whichever is darker, and the visual result is exactly as the name suggests. So if I grab darken, boom. So it's just using the base color, it's using the blend color to darken the base color, like so. Now moving down from here, we have multiply. And what this actually does is this multiplies the brush color channels. So the RGB channels in this case, because we're using an RGB image, the numbers for those colors, so you can see like the RGB values here, they're actually being multiplied by each other, and we're getting the result out of that. It's a common blend mode that is used in a lot of different applications, all the way down to game engines. We'll use multiply to create overlay effects. Now, the neat thing to keep in mind here is that if you are blending by black, you will always get black. If you're blending by white, you will always get whatever the original color was, because anything multiplied by 1 is whatever that color was, or whatever that number is. So if I take 5 and multiply it by 1, the answer is 5. But if I take 5 and multiply it by 0, the answer is 0. And 0 is always black. So for instance, if I grab my paintbrush and I hit the D key and I paint a swath of black, we just get black, nothing changes. However, if I hit X and change over to white, we get nothing. Now, it looks like I didn't even paint anything, but just to show you the difference, if I switch back over to normal, you can see that white paintbrush stroke coming through. But since white has a numeric value of 1, what's going on there is it's kind of like multiplying all of my color values by 1. And you just end up with the same color. So I'll go ahead and undo that with Control-Alt-Z a couple of times to make sure that I don't have that paint stroke there anymore. Now let's move down. We now have color burn. And what color burn is going to do, actually I want to mention this. You'll see these two words, burn and dodge. These are in reference to the actual photographic developing process of burning or dodging in an enlarger. If you're unfamiliar with that, what burning is taking your photo paper and exposing it to a little more light, which would cause darker areas on your image, because that's how photo paper works. You take a negative, you project it down onto a piece of photo paper, and you actually get the negative of the negative, which of course is the positive. If you needed an area to be darker, you would just allow a little more light to hit that one spot of the photo paper, and that would darken up your image in that area, hence the name burn. Dodge, on the other hand, means that you are taking a part of the photo paper and covering it up, like you're making a shadow on it to protect it from the light. You're making the light dodge that area, which is going to give you a result of a lighter area. That's just a little bit of kind of photo history if you're interested in that. Now what color burn is going to do is darken the existing color to reflect the blend color, and white is going to not change anything. So if you see here, because we are on a white background, we're kind of getting no result wherever the color's out there, but it's just kind of darkening our overall result. Now if we switch over to linear burn, this is going to darken the base color by lowering the brightness value of each pixel based on the blend color. And if our blend color was white, we would get no change at all. And then finally we have darker color, and this is going to actually do a selection of which color between the two is darker. So it's not going to produce a result color at all. Photoshop is going to take a look at the blend color and the base color. It's going to decide which of the two was darker, and it's just going to choose that color. So for instance, just to kind of show off, if I grab a much darker shade of something like blue, and I was to paint that down, so let me get my paintbrush tool out. What do you think is going to happen when the paintbrush hits the red splotch? It looks like we're painting right over it. That's because this shade of blue is darker than this shade of red, so Photoshop decides to let the blue have 100% of the blend. So it's kind of like almost like a switch statement. It basically says, this is darker, so we're going to show that and not the red instead. But it is really cool to move this, and you almost get this interesting depth effect. So you can definitely use that to your advantage. Okay, so that is a rundown of everything all the way through darker color. That is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.